Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I sit here once again in my 35 square meters of glorious gym empire, ready to answer all your questions, both the intelligent ones and the ones I need a drink for. L'chaim. Pat asks, what outside of pure strength training would you recommend people do? There's something outside pure strength training, Pat? Are you sure about that? Eat good food and do 10,000 steps a day, or the equivalent. Honestly, for a healthy young person, that's probably enough. As we get older, particularly us guys, some more cardio will be needed for what the word cardio means, for the heart, because we're more prone for that to go wrong. As well, both men and women tend to stiffen up with age, and us guys in particular. So some more mobility work will be needed, probably daily. I think probably the ideal workout plan for somebody for health would be a couple of strength training sessions a week, a couple of hard cardio sessions a week, and a couple of mobility sessions a week, something like a yoga class or something. And if you're just working out for health, you don't have to push yourself particularly hard and it won't take hours. You could probably do it all in half an hour. Something like kettlebells are very good for maintaining strength. They're not really great for building strength. Barbell's the better tool for that, but they're pretty good for maintaining strength. As an example, a guy I trained, Ramon, who I hope is watching this, he worked up to something like squatting 110 for 20 reps or something, put on a stack of body weight and so on. And then he didn't have a good gym available for a long time, so he just used, and he could deadlift 170, and so he just used kettlebells for about 18 months, and then he went back to a big gym and tried out a big deadlift, and he could once again deadlift 170. So the kettlebells hadn't really built his strength, but they maintained it. So if you just had like 3 bells and a pull-up bar, you could do a decent half-hour workout and maintain your strength pretty well, and that would leave you more time for cardio stuff and mobility stuff, if your goal purely health. But if you want the gains, well, you got to lift heavy. Dave asks, what have been your most notably satisfying or regretful equipment purchases? Well, Dave, we just kind of have barbells here pretty much, and farmer's walk handles and power racks and stuff. So there's not a lot for us to regret or really love, except the barbells. So I regret buying a cheap, crappy Chinese barbell. They're cheap because they're just carbon steel with chrome on them, and they have a poor knurling. And because they're just carbon steel, to have a stiffness that can withstand heavy weights, they have to be thicker. So poor knurling, thicker, it's not a pleasure to work with, and they bend fairly easily. As the old saying goes, buy nice or buy twice. So the best purchase I feel like I've made is the Penlay barbell, which they run about $850 or $1,100 new. I got it second hand for I think $450 or something. And for weightlifting, it's a very good barbell. For the power lifters, just doing the slow lifts, the ABC, Australian Barbell Company, makes very good barbells. The knurling can be a bit inconsistent, but even with that said, even the worst knurling on the ABC barbell is better than most. It grips tight. It's not going to slip off your back or out of your hands. Lihira asks, explain ATP and whether it matters. Well, adenosine triphosphate is part of the glycolytic cycle, but that's probably not what Lihira means. She's probably after anterior pelvic tilt. So that's the Instagram girl pose, sticking the booty out. Women will tend to have more anterior pelvic tilt than men, simply because they've got more internal organs down there. They've got a uterus and so on down there. in and of itself, anterior pelvic tilt, like any other muscle imbalance, does not mean anything. My right arm is stronger than my left because I'm right-handed, and it's also the shoulder's more mobile and so on. Does this mean that I have to become ambidextrous before I can start lifting? No. Everyone has imbalances. Just look at my face. The question is whether the imbalance is gross enough to cause pain or hinder movement. If it causes pain, well, we just do something else that doesn't cause you pain, and if everything causes you pain, we refer you for medical advice. If movement is hindered, well, that's my job as a trainer, to make your movement not hindered, to teach you correct movement, and to give whatever mobility exercises or technique cues or whatever, or adaptations of the movement are necessary to get you into a good position. But yeah, anterior pelvic tilt in and of itself, it doesn't mean anything. If there is pain, it'll be lower back pain and in the hip flexor. So in that case, the one just makes the abs stronger by means of farmers walks and deadlifts and so on, and does hip flexor stretches. And this usually won't change the anterior pelvic tilt much. Posture doesn't change much. But it'll take away the pain, which is what most people care about. And if there's no pain, don't worry about it. The booty sticks out. Become a fitness model. An anonymous person, or person who wishes to remain anonymous, asks, what do you look for in a client? We look for likable, reliable, and hardworking. 2 out of 3 will do. If someone's likable and reliable, but when they're around, they're a real slack ass, we'll kind of forgive them because we like them and they're always there. You can rely on them to show up. If they're not likable, but they're really reliable, and when they show up, they really work hard, you'll forgive them for being a boring bastard. Just do another set, mate. Oh, just finished. Just do another set. Yeah, but 1 out of 3 will not do. 1 out of 3 is not good enough. If you're just likable, but you're really unreliable and you're a real slack ass, hey, let's have a coffee sometime. Forget about the training, you're wasting your time and my money. Let's have a coffee and chat. I won't wait for you to show up before I order, but if a person is just hardworking, but you don't really like them and they're unreliable, well, they're not going to get much results just showing up and busting their ass at random number of times a month. And they'll gradually fade away anyway. But the worst of all is when somebody's reliable, but they're not likable and they're not hardworking. So you don't like them. They complain all the time and they're all slack in the gym. They don't want to work hard and do the things necessary to get results. But they're always there. I vividly remember in the Glowbird gym, this one particular guy, and at 5 to 7 every morning, I would be anxiously glancing at my phone, hoping to see a text message saying, I'm not coming in today. But 1 minute later, 4 minutes early, he would come striding in, ready to bore me shitless. Now, if they're 3 out of 3, if they're likable, reliable, and hardworking, we as trainers will love them, hold them close, be nice to them, give them things. Because wouldn't you like to spend all your workday with people who are likable, reliable, and hardworking? Lachlan asks, at what point do you think the strength someone has gained is enough? Do you have strength standards, or is it based on the individual? Well, the smart ass answer is, if you have to ask, you're not strong enough. The more subtle and nuanced answer is that why wouldn't you keep pushing? And the reason you wouldn't keep pushing is that it's hard. Okay, fair enough. So let's say you decide that strength level X is enough. X being a variable for a reason that you know, obviously a ping pong player doesn't need a 200 kilogram squat, but a rugby prop made it. So you decide that X is sufficient strength for whatever your purposes are. You're just going to maintain from there, and you won't have to push anymore, right? Well, no, because you're going to get sick, you're going to get injured, you're going to go on holiday, you're going to have a kid and not sleep for 6 months. You're going to get just sick of the gym and want to go and do something else for a while. And when you come back to it after a break, your strength will have dropped. So if here is where you want to be and you've dropped down to here, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to push to get back up here, aren't you? So in practice, those sorts of times of being sick or injured or sick of it or whatever are going to happen 2 or 3 times a year. So there's going to be 2 or 3 times a year where you have to push anyway, just to get back to X, whatever X is. If you're going to have to do that anyway, why not plan for it? Why not plan and say, I'm going to build up for 6 weeks and then drop back, and then build up for another 6 weeks and drop back. And at this time of year, I'm going to be busy because it's Christmas, or I'm a tax accountant and it's July or something like that. That'll be the easy time. That'll be the time I just take a month off the gym, whatever. So in that sense, the strength standards don't, whatever they might be, they don't matter too much. As well, you might want to think that if you are going to drop back from whatever X is, isn't it better to have X plus a bit? So when you do drop back, you're still at that standard. Because in the end, strength is like money. When you haven't got any, a little bit makes a huge difference to your life. Huge. But then, however much you've got, some more would be nice, right? The only question is, are you willing to do the work required to get there? And that's a very individual question for a person. Or the answer is very individual. Jason asks, do you find in the quest to consistently increase weights as per starting strength program, form begins to become compromised? Well, yeah. If you get up to a weight that's heavy for you, your form will become worse. But this doesn't mean that necessarily that it's time to drop back and build up again or something like that. It means that it's time to concentrate a bit harder on form. And if some degradation is inevitable, it is better to have good form that drops to okay than having okay form that drops to shitty. So what you do is, at the start, when it's light and medium, you make your form as good as possible. So when it's heavy and you can't even think of good form anymore because there's this enormous weight on your back trying to crush you to death, at that stage, it'll be at least okay. So, to my mind, this sort of question is like what are the strength standards? The question really is, it's getting hard now, Kyle. Can we take it a bit easier? Every male I've had under the bar at some point comes up to the bar after his last session with 102.5 or whatever was grindy, and he almost didn't make the last rep or two, and he comes up to do 105 and he looks at the bar and he turns to me, shouldn't I stay on that other weight until this one gets easy? Or he says, actually, I'd like to work on my cardio for a while. The truth is that shit just got hard. But that's kind of the point of what we're doing. So make sure your form is good in the beginning, and then when it's inevitably compromised a bit later on, it's still okay. McCarver asks, what exercise would you recommend for people with previous back injuries, i.e. slip disc? Give us a light to us fellow back pain sufferers. Well, depends on the nature of the back injury. If you're talking about slip discs, if you're talking about pulled muscles, you mostly need to rest them initially and then pump some blood into the muscle with lots of lightweight reps. If you're talking about slip discs and things, what's happening effectively is that the joint is coming apart and things are oozing out. So the reason that there's pain, and there's sciatica where the bit that oozing out is pushing on a nerve, And there's also muscle spasms. Basically, the body is saying, this thing is about to fall apart, so the muscles have to seize up to hold it together. This is what happens if you've ever broken your arm or something, and for a moment it's all floppy, and then it seizes up, because the body's trying to hold the joint together. It's trying to hold the broken bones together. That seizure is nature's plaster cast, if you like. So the same thing happens with people suffering from back pain. The body feels the joint coming apart, so it seizes up to hold it back together. But think of it this way: if you have 20 units of strength, and it takes 20 units of strength to sit upright or to have that good posture or whatever, then your back's going to fatigue and the muscles will panic and seize up. But if you have 40 units of strength, then that 20 units is that you need is not a big deal. So the body isn't going to panic as often and things don't seize up as much. And in fact, this is what we see with people go through when they squat, they press, they deadlift, they do rows or chin-ups and farmers walks, and they get stronger. And if they've got non-specific back pain, it's not tied to a particular injury or whatever, that pain goes away in 2 or 3 weeks. And if it's tied to a particular injury, it goes away in 5 or 6 weeks, except in some pretty nasty cases with surgery and so on. Probably the last one today. Matt asks, for those with less time to train, such as maybe 2 times a week, what are the strength and accessory exercises you could focus on? It's the same as for everything else. It's squat, press, deadlift, rows or chin-ups and farmers walks. Time need not be a limit for the number and type of exercises you do. It's a limit more for the weight. Matt in particular will know this because he's squatted like 230 kilograms. So, you do sets of something like that, you need to rest a long time between sets of 200 kilograms. You don't need to rest as long between sets of 100 or 60 or whatever. So the time that a workout takes is more of a function of the load. The load doesn't have to be really heavy to build a decent level of strength. There are programs like Easy Strength and so on where the person's working out frequently, but not for long. They're working out at about 70%, doing 10 reps or something every day. And the whole workout only takes half an hour. So if, like me, you've got a gym close by, you can do that every day. Of course, there's travel time to the gym and so on. But yeah, so it's not the exercises as such, it's the load and the sets and reps that makes things take ages. Perhaps one more. Exercises for inactive desk jockeys to improve posture. It's, as I said, squat, press, deadlift, chin-ups, farmers walks, and it's just an appropriate variation for that individual. Somebody comes in with ankylosing spondylitis, they're not going to do a pull from the floor, but they can do a rack pull. It's the same hip hinging movement. Someone comes in with a shoulder impingement, they're not going to do a bench press, but they can do a close grip bench press. And over time, once they've done some rows and so on, they can do an overhead press. So everyone needs to squat, everyone needs to do a pushing movement, everyone needs to do a pulling movement, everyone needs to do a hip hinging movement, everyone needs to do a loaded carry. The only question is which particular variation we're going to use, and that depends on your training history and any relevant injuries and so on. But you're all going to do some kind of squat, you're all going to do some kind of push, some kind of pull, some sort of hip hinge, some sort of loaded carry. The details, the programming is what I get the big bucks for. L'chaim, have a good night.